All right, what's going on, you guys? You know what time it is. We are back on another Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time to what we are currently calling the Men of Impact Show with Dr. Brad. But here very soon, as I alluded to last week, we're going to be switching some things up, a little bit new branding, just pivoting just right to make sure that we're targeting the right people, that you're getting the right message, particularly with where you may be at in life. And so what was, I guess we can say, in transition of Men of Impact with Dr. Brad, but soon to be a new show, which we'll be taking a survey on here on my Facebook page. But regardless, I can tell you you're in the right place, because this is the place where high achieving men come to do three things. And that is to achieve their goals, improve their productivity, and pursue their purpose. And so, as always, we want to make sure that this show is interactive. So if you are here for the first time live, we appreciate you being on. If you are on a replay, then we appreciate you as well. But we want to be able to interact with you. I want to be able to answer your questions. Let us know where you're from, what's going on. And particularly as I bring another phenomenal guest to you today, if you have any questions or comments as I bring him on, make sure that you do that. And so I like to describe this show as the perfect combination of both faith-based and peak performance strategies for men to succeed in both work and life, so that we can be the best men that we can be. Okay. And so I'll give you this opportunity to like, share, and subscribe. For those of you who are on, technology is crazy now, because I am in 3 places at one time. I'm on Facebook. I'm on my Facebook fan page. I'm on my Facebook personal page, and I'm on YouTube all at the same time. But for my YouTube folks, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That way that not only when this show goes live, but whenever I'm putting any new content and material to be able to help you become the man that you're looking to be, that high performing individual who succeeds in both work and life, that anytime any of that material is coming across, that you get it. Okay. And listen, this show, we're just looking to bless you guys. So if it is, make sure that you share this with somebody else, because primarily this is not about me. This is for all of us to be able to be the best men that we can be. And so I usually like to start off the show with something that's been on my mind. And, first, but I can't go on without even recognizing the fact that, we lost somebody who was of great impact. I mean, we talk about men of impact as I've called this show up to now. And the unfortunate loss of Chadwick Boseman, I would be remiss if I didn't mention his name and just say, obviously I didn't know him personally, but you talk about somebody who seems of just great character. And, my mom and I were talking on my drive home today, talking about how over the last 4 years to see someone silently suffering, but put in what most believe to be his greatest work in the last 4 years is absolutely amazing. And I encourage you to watch an interview that he had where he's talking about, at the release of Black Panther, about 2 kids he was inspired to continue doing the movie for, because they had cancer and their parents were saying that they were waiting, that they had terminal cancer, and they were literally waiting for the release of the movie. That was the only thing that they were holding on to that was keeping them alive, was them waiting. And during the course of this interview, he gets emotional, but he never shares at that time that he has cancer as well. And so it's just a lesson of being able to move in humility, to take massive action, but still have this humble side of you, to realize that the work that you're doing is not about you. All right. Many of us have big goals, big dreams, things that we're going after. And I can be the first to tell you, early on in my career as a physician, even in my career as an entrepreneur, much of what I did had this selfish overlay over it, right? Like, who's going to see it? How many people saw it? And, how am I going to benefit from what I'm doing? And it wasn't until, you kind of go through this process, right? This process of growth and maturity, sometimes pain. You just start realizing that this is not about me, and that I'm able to be more self-motivated by knowing that it has nothing to do with me, but it has everything to do with the people who will be impacted. So may he rest in heaven. And then I'm a big basketball fan. For those of you, I don't know if you're basketball fans, but Coach John Thompson, the original coach for George, well, not the original coach, but he was original John Thompson. His son started coaching at Georgetown, but Coach John Thompson recently passed this week as well. You talk about somebody who was also a civil rights activist and really spoke out for people of the Black race, and really started bringing. He made basketball cool at Georgetown. Before that, I don't know if he ever did. So listen, you guys, I just want to inspire you by telling you, make sure that your goals, you will be more motivated by shining the light on others as opposed to yourself. And just keep in mind, this is not about me. There are other people who are waiting for your greatness. All right. All right. Well, listen, it's time to go ahead and get started with today's show, particularly, or at least with the interview part of the show. I'm very excited to have this person on because you talk about high energy, just cool people, someone who's got a very compelling story, but also is able to deliver a story. And so his name is Mr. Robert Kennedy III. And for me to go through his whole bio, we'd be here for the rest of the evening, and then I have to shut it down without even bringing him on. But let me just tell you, extremely impactful man. He's a trainer, keynote speaker, workshop facilitator, and coach in leadership communication and presentation confidence. So I want to let you know, if you are a leader, by the way, if you have a family, you're a leader. By the way, if you have friends, you are a leader. So pretty much this is going to be for everyone's, but specifically for those in leadership positions at work or entrepreneurs, you really need to listen up on today's show. Over the last 15 years, he's helped executives and business leaders on bringing their communication to life. So I'm going to be a little bit selfish today because I need some of these coaching and things that with people. He specializes in public presentation skills, speech preparation and culture, team building, presentation planning, development, and delivery. He's worked with companies like Barnes and Noble, and we're talking about big time companies, Panda Restaurant Group, Johnson & Johnson, U.S. Coast Guard. Again, I can go on and on, but he and I today are going to be talking about the power of a signature story and how influential, inspiring, and impactful it can be. And I'm excited to have him on. So Mr. Robert Kennedy III, how you doing, my friend? Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Brad. What is happening? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. So as I was telling everybody, man, I've had the opportunity to be able to see some of your videos, and one of the things I love about this show is I get to meet new people. And I remember watching your videos a couple of weeks ago as we were scheduling this meeting, and I was like, man, you talk about somebody who is high energy, hilarious. Like, I remember looking at your videos, laughing out loud. My wife was like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm looking at the guy we're going to have on the show here in a little bit. So, no, man, I appreciate you being on. We already got some folks chiming in. My man, Reggie Hilliard, say he's locked and loaded, already ready to get after it. And yes, Kevin, sir, who is a comedian right there along with you, Kevin says he has no friends. Kevin's got a lot of friends. But anyway, so I mentioned a lot of things in your bio, but I know you're a master at storytelling and how to be able to help people bring their story to life. And so, but just kind of tell people in general what it is that you do.
Man, so I guess the elevator pitch really is I work with leaders or busy leaders who need to deliver critical messages with confidence. So those are leaders typically who are middle managers in their organizations, people that are aspiring leaders on their way up, and they've got a message that they need to share. They've got training, they've got vision that they need to pass on to people. So I help them figure out how to do that in a way that impacts, influences, and inspires. So that's what I do every day, all day, man. Have fun doing it. Love it. Yeah.
So So again, so let's just jump into your story because
Yeah.
um, I want people to do a couple things. Want to hear your story, but hear how compelling you tell a story
Yeah.
because you weren't always this master storyteller, or I think you were, but you've tailored some of your gifts and talent and what you've seen over time
Yeah.
to be able to really pour into people. But how did this all start? Because at one point you were a teacher. It wasn't an entrepreneur. Take us from that point to how you got to where you are now.
Man, I feel like my entire life has been an accident in a lot of ways because you know how some people have this thing, and you've heard people say that from the time I was 7 years old, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor, right? That may be your story. I don't know. There's
Right.
so, or some people say, from the time I was in I entered a talent show in high school, and I knew from then that I wanted to be on stage. Man, for me, it's been kind of this journey, left, right, up, down, diagonal, upside down, and just been one of those stories of taking chances and
Mm,
deciding at some point, hey, you know what? I think I want to do this thing. I think I want to do that thing. And really ending up here. And my wife laughs every time we have these conversations. And she says, you know what? Nothing is wasted. Nothing in your life is wasted. It's like everything that you do now is this amalgamation of all of the experiences that you've been through and the things that you're asked to do and the things that you help people with are not by accident. It's literally all those things that when you were doing them in some cases, like when I was doing voiceovers, man, I was an e-learning course developer at the time, and I for some reason I said, you know what, I want to learn how to do voiceovers. And so I went to studio, I did a voiceover demo. I started to put my voice out and started to do that. And is that something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life? I didn't know. I didn't know. I just, hey,
right.
this is cool. I think I want to take a chance on this. Right. And so, I ended up doing voiceovers for a lot of online courses, a lot of e-learning productions. I ended up doing voiceovers. I did some commercials. I had a Nature Valley commercial, and so there was just like all of that. So now I'm in this place where I'm teaching people not just how to speak like they do in Toastmasters. I'm
Right.
teaching them some of these subtle nuances of voice. What do you need to do with your breathing? What do you need to do with your diaphragm? What do you need to do with certain phrasing? How do you read ahead? How do you understand
Mm.
the message that you want to share with the audience and connect with them in such a way that you know just what range or what part of your voice to use to really get that message and make it sit on their hearts, man. So all of that, man. I could go through every nuance. I mean, I was a real estate agent for 5 years. So
Well, the reason I want people to hear that, number one, I wish I had enough clarity at 7 to know I was going to be a doctor,
yeah,
but that's a whole nother story. But I think oftentimes at some point we all feel like we're this person who's, I guess, some may consider just kind of like this, this free spirit, right?
yeah,
Like, oh, I'm kind of doing this because it sounds good, or and then I get afraid that some people are thinking like, well, when is anybody gonna really take me serious because I'm kind of doing a little bit of this and doing a little bit of that, and to
yeah,
be able to see, you've had a massive amount of success,
yeah.
and so I think people need to be encouraged by saying exactly what you said. Listen,
Right.
all these things are for a reason. All these things are kind of putting some tools in my tool belt. All these things I can be able to use in their experiences that I can draw upon from the past
Hmm.
to be able to kind of make me get to a certain point. And that stuff has been preparation, and it hadn't all just been lost.
Yeah. So I think inside of that, man, it's not even so much that I was clear and knew what these were going to become the building blocks for. I
Right.
I didn't have those answers back then. I think what it is whatever you decide you're going to do, be all in. Be all in. I was
Mm.
never
Whew.
just half stepping in the door and say, "Let me try this." And no, I don't want to do that anymore. It was like literally if I'm doing it, it's 100%. My wife says that I've got two speeds, off and on. Right? And so it's like if I'm doing it, boom, we're gonna take it. Like I'm gonna stay up late at night. I'm gonna build the website. I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna if I need to buy extra stuff, if I need to figure stuff out on my own, I'm
That's
gonna
right.
be all in to that thing until it either doesn't work anymore or I find something else that I'm either feeling called to at
Sure.
that point. And I think there's a faith-based element to this show. So
Sure.
I'll share that there are some parts of my life where, I know that God has said, do this.
Mm.
Right. And it's not what I'm doing right now. It's like, do that, because either because he's saying, listen, I know you're stubborn and I need you to go through this process anyway. Right.
Woo.
Right.
Look, Robert, you
Or
ain't allowed to come on my show and preach to me, by the way.
listen,
I mean, I'm
listen.
gonna take it. I'm just saying, like, you preaching to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you go through, you reach those, and then when it's not working anymore, he literally will shut the door sometimes. Okay, stop. I don't want you to do that anymore. And you try to push on. He's like, no, I'm not going to let it work. I'm not going to let it work. I'm gonna block it. Right. And so I've had those moments and those stages and the entrepreneur journey where you're feeling success and you're getting these contracts, and then the next month or the next year, you're like, whoa, where did all that go?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
My gosh, I got to take care of my family. How's this going to happen? How's this going to happen? Right. And so it's a faith journey, man. And it's really just, when I think Steve Jobs said it really well at one of his Stanford University speeches, commencement speech. He said, you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them going backwards. Right. So it's like you jump on all these blocks, or you jump on all these little dots and these little rocks or whatever.
That's right.
And you don't see them because it's like fog in front of you. But then once you pass them and you've hit them, now you look back and you're like, whoa, that's where it came from. And those rocks, those dots didn't just kind of appear out of nowhere. They've always been there. I just had to take the step. Right. I just had to have faith in order to step forward, and then I can look back and see what the path looks like.
Well, it's so funny. And look, we're going off script because we're going to come back to the story here, but we're just on this, we're on this good stuff. I mean, it's just because I speak about fog oftentimes, and when it comes to clarity of moving forward, and I don't think it's meant for us to be able to see miles ahead. No. Because, I've started to understand, at least myself, if I see miles ahead, I'll be like, I got time. Like I'm good. Like I can see all the way, right? Yeah. But there's something about fog that when you start moving, you'll see. Yeah. If you stay still, you don't. And so I think about driving in the car, you're very careful, but as you move, you see a little more of the street and a little more of the street. Yeah. And I've never thought about that in terms of what you said. I'm stealing that, by the way. I guess Jobs takes credit for it, but yeah, you can only connect the dots, looking backwards, man. Yeah. I love that. So let's talk about storytelling, because this is your thing. How did you figure out, like, this is that thing that I'm supposed to be in? How'd you figure that out?
Well, it's again a natural progression. So if I were to tell you my story, as I share at conferences sometimes, when I was about 1.5 or 2 years old, I was born originally in the island of Jamaica. And so in Jamaica, we have people in our house. Sometimes we call them helpers, like maids. And we've got people and because you have a helper doesn't mean you're rich, right? It's just, it's just kind of how the island works.
Yeah, because I immediately thought you was rich as you saying that. So I'm glad you clarified that up.
Right. So I had people in our house that sometimes they would say, and when I was a kid, they called me Bobby. They were like, Bobby, you talk too much. You talk too much. You talk too much. You ask too many questions. You should be a lawyer. You talk too much. Right. And I would hear that all the time. And so probably from the age of about 2.5, 3, I shut down because I was hearing that. Oh, wow. And sidebar, be careful of how you speak to kids. All right. So I shut down. And so for most of my childhood, I was known as this shy kid. Wow. There could be a party. I'll be in my room playing with trains, man. Let's do that. And so from that until maybe my senior year of high school, maybe my freshman year of college, I was like very withdrawn. As a matter of fact, to this day, if I take the Myers-Briggs test, it says introvert. Right. And when I tell that to people, they're like, no, you're lying.
They're like, they don't believe you. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I got to a place where there were certain things that just caught my interest, and I didn't notice it at the time, but it's always been communication. I got this job as a mental health counselor in my senior year, and I started doing that, and I kept doing that after I graduated from college for a couple of years. And I had an apartment, and every day I would drive past this building from my apartment on my way to work, and I would pass the building on my way from work back home. And every day, for some reason, I kept turning towards this building, and I wanted to go in the building, and I didn't know why I wanted to go in the building. But one day, I decided to stop there, and I went into the building, and there's a receptionist at the front door, and she said, "Who?" I said, "Can I speak to the owner?" And she said, "Who may I tell him is calling?" I said, "Tell him Robert Kennedy's here," right? so this is in the state of Massachusetts at the time, by the way.
Okay.
So
it's gonna be in for a surprise, by the way, but yeah. Okay.
So the owner comes out and we speak. So now I'll reveal to you what I'm talking about. It was a radio station. Hold on,
right? back up, Robert.
Yeah.
You were compelled.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, we know this was, like you said, this is faith-based, so you were being called.
Yeah.
And you just literally asked for the owner.
Yeah.
You just asked for the owner.
I just asked for the owner. I went in, asked for the owner. And so we go into his office and we speak for maybe like 45 minutes. And he's like, how can I help you? I said, I'm not sure. I think I want to be involved with radio. And so he says,
what?
He says, yeah, you sound like you've got a really good instrument. Your voice, you have a really good instrument for radio. It needs to be tweaked and some training, etc. So that day, he gives me an internship with the news anchor for the radio station. Right. And so I do this. I intern with this guy, the news anchor, for 8 months. And then at the end of 8 months, the news anchor comes to me. He says, "Hey, listen, I've got this job offer upstate New York. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put your name in with Larry because I think you can handle." It's an AM radio station. He said, "I think you can handle the job." So the owner comes to me the next day and he says, "Hey, Larry spoke to me. He told me he spoke to you, and I want to give you this opportunity. Here's what it's going to entail. You got to wake up at 3:30 in the morning. You got to be in the station by like 3:45, 4 o'clock, get all the stuff together and be here for the 5:30 a.m. broadcast, right? You got to do that. You'll be done by 11:30 in the day. And oh, by the way, the pay is $6 an hour." Right? So this is the 90s, brother. This is the 90s. Right. And so at this time, I've got an apartment. I've got a black, chrome rimmed, tinted, just like flossed out Acura Integra.
I remember the Acura Integra, man.
So my mind at this point, what's dinging in my mind is like, dude, how do you do this? Have your apartment, have your car, and all of this stuff. And I'm involved in music and all of that at the time. And so I freaked out. So I turned down the job offer.
Wow.
I turned it down, and I went into I moved from mental health and into teaching. So long story short, about my 4th year of teaching, my wife and I are sitting in our room, and we're doing that thing that married couples do in their bedroom, the budget.
Robert, I'm like, oh, we going there. I'm like, oh, we going there. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, so look, we about to tell some stories today. And then you say, but I'm like, okay, yeah.
So she says to me, "Dude, you're spending too much money on CDs." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I mean, I'm in a music group at the time. I'm like, dude, I've got to have CD. I got to know what the latest gospel album is. I got to know what the latest stuff is. And so she's like, "Hey, listen, baby, if we're going to make it, this look at what you're spending."
Right.
And I'm like, oh, man, I know she's right. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I still got to get my CDs. So I don't know how I figured it out, but I figured out that I could call A&R representatives at record companies or call PR companies and tell them that I wanted to interview their artists, and they would send me free CDs.
Wow.
So I call a record company and call a few of them, and they're like, "Okay, what's your website?" And I'm like, "You know what? We're working on some stuff. Let me call you back in 2 days." So I learned HTML in 2 days, and I put up a website.
Wow.
And I put up this website, and I get information, I put it on there, and I send the information to these record companies. And so I've got CDs coming. My very first CD, I don't remember if you remember Tweet, right? That was the first CD that came.
Yes, I do remember Tweet.
She wasn't exactly gospel at the time.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't. I can remember Tweet. That's crazy.
So they send me these CDs. And so, dude, I look back at it. I'm interviewing people, right?
Uh-huh.
Communication.
Yep.
A friend of mine, he wasn't even a friend at the time. We kind of knew each other tangentially. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, I've got this internet radio station. Can we merge forces? Can we become partners?" So we do that. And we are like the second or third gospel promotions website that puts an internet radio station online.
Wow.
So we do that. And so the site views go through the roof at this point. So we're like the third ranked site in the United States, right? For gospel music genre. And so we're getting ads on the radio station. We're, the big gospel artists, we're interviewing them. Fred Hammond, Jay
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Maurette Brown Clark. We're interviewing all of them. Mary. We're interviewing all of them. They have a concert in the area. We're backstage, right?
Wow.
Radio, voice, communication.
Yes.
Man, whatever I'm doing in my life, somehow I end up, I include the teaching. Whatever
Yes.
I'm doing, I somehow end up in a space where I'm telling stories, I'm communicating with people, I'm drawing information out, we're creating dialogue. And that's it's like that Jonah story. No matter where you go,
Man.
no matter where you're running, right?
You got
end
something
right
for
back
you.
up.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, did you start noticing, did you kind of start putting the pieces of the puzzle together? Like, yo, every time, hold on. Every time I'm communicating and using my voice, things seem to, like there's some level of success with it. At what point did you say, okay, look, I'm going to take this and start teaching others with the gift that I have?
Dude, I'm stubborn. It didn't click. I was just doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so I stop. Well, I keep doing the website. I start developing websites for independent artists. So I start a second company, like while I'm still teaching.
Okay.
Right?
You Jamaican, by the way. Look, I'm not. I know you Jamaican.
Yeah.
Because you got about 4-5 things going on at this point.
So I leave teaching in about 2005, and I become a real estate agent. So I'm doing the website. I'm doing the music promotion site. I'm doing the web development company, and I'm being a real estate agent at this time. Right. And this is when the bubble was like big. I could just like walk out my front door and sell a house. Right.
Wow.
So all of this is happening. And I decide at some point that I'm going to go teach again. So I start teaching again for an online university in their biology department. Right. I'm a biology faculty for them. So 2 years pass, and we decide that we're going to leave Massachusetts and move to Maryland, to relocate to Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
We get to Maryland. 10 days after we get here, I lose my job online. Right. So, but the funny thing was, because we had moved, there were some things that I didn't continue. I didn't transition my real estate license. I didn't do any of that. I'm here. I'm like, okay, we're coming. This teaching job that I got is my stuff. Is our stuff. My wife got a job, and we're planning on this. 10 days after we move, I lose my job. I've got 3 kids under the age of 5 at this point.
Oh, man. Oh, I just felt a weight.
Yeah.
I was okay until you said the 3 kids part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof. So we've got 3 kids. And then, so I lose this job, and I do what most people do when they lose a job. They start to put out resumes. They start to, look on Indeed, Monster, et cetera, et cetera. I'm doing that. So this is July. From July until November or December, I got not one response. No interviews and letdowns, no rejections, no nothing. I just silence. So, right around in September, I'm kind of messing around with some stuff, and I'm, I had, we kind of sensed, I kind of knew that the let go was coming. So I started to prepare a little bit. I got into what was called instructional design at the time, which was really building online courses. So I I mean, I wish I could tell you like all the details of this story, but I mean, in this part of the story, God literally allowed some guy that I didn't know that was a vice president for a software company to give me, Give me, right? Give me $2,500 worth of software for no reason, Never met him in person. We literally had like 2 or 3 phone conversations, right? Gave me 2,500 worth of software so that I could start practicing, and he was, so I could start doing some stuff. So I because I had that, I was now able to begin contracting and building courses for people. So I'm building these courses for people, and after a little while, it starts to hit me like, they're not just asking me to build the courses, they're asking me how they can communicate the ideas more effectively to their employees. And so after a while, companies start saying, hey, we don't want you just to build it for us. Can you teach us how to do it? So I'm teaching them the software, but I'm also now teaching them how to put it in a way that it's going to connect and really translate to the people who are taking the courses. So
how to communicate the message. So not just how to the instructional implementation piece.
Yeah.
But the communication
piece. Yeah. So my teacher background comes into play now, right? Because I'm building courses, right? My teacher background comes into play. All of the stuff that I learned from radio about connecting with audiences, now that stuff comes into play. All of my interview background from the websites that I made and the gospel music promotion interviews, all of that is coming into play now with, and I'm telling people, hey, you can't just shove information at people. You've got to share a story with them. You've got to do what we called scenario-based approaches for your courses.
Yes.
And that's essentially, it's like that, the build your own adventure or choose your own adventure stories that my mom used to give me, these books. It's like, you're at a fork in the road, and if you want to go left, turn page 95.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm telling them, you've got to approach your stories or your trainings in this way. You've got to have a story-based approach to it. Right? So it still doesn't hit me at this point. It still doesn't hit me. So, I mean, so now companies are saying, after I start to talk about communication a little bit, I start getting some calls from companies. I start connecting with colleges in the area, and they're saying, hey, can you do leadership development training? I'm like, okay. All right. So, so I start doing leadership development. So some of it is conflict management. Some of it is team building. Some of it is emotional intelligence. And I'm doing all of these different things. But the one that hits me, like, boom, the one that hits me is when they say, hey, can you do communication or presentation training?
Okay, so wait, so I got to interrupt you here, Robert. Now, they're asking you to do courses about leadership, conflict resolution, all this stuff. Do they have the content and then they tell you to build out the course, or are they saying we need you to build a leadership course? So
at this point, so before, when I was doing the online course development, they would provide me the just like a PowerPoint, and I would build the course.
Gotcha.
Now, at this point, they're saying, can you train people using our content? Right?
Gotcha.
So here's what's happening. I'm looking at the content. I'm like, that's not good. Right? So I'm taking it, and I'm like, I'm doing it in a way that really brings energy to the classroom, that really sets things up in a certain way. And so at the end of all of these courses or workshops, you get these evaluations, these surveys that so dude, I mean, I'm knocking it out of the park with these evaluations, and literally companies are requesting me to come back. They said, listen, we got 5 things we want to do. Does Robert do all 5 of them? Can we have Robert? So I'm like, so I'm just, I'm going through this, and I'm asking what is going on here, or why is it that the companies want me? And so I'm starting to hear from some of them that, number one, we just love your energy. Number two, you have this way of sharing stories or content that connect with the people no matter what level they are. Right? So some of them are managers, some of them are like field reps, some of them are people that work out in the yard. They just happen to come in, and they're literally wearing their Carhartt construction outfits.
And they
right?
feeling what you're talking about.
Right. So I'm kind of like, okay, so right around 2014 now, I said, okay, listen, something's going on here. I need to figure out this speaking thing a little bit. So I joined Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined Toastmasters. And so you remember the whole 0 to 100 thing, on or off. I'm like, some people say, I'm going to join Toastmasters. I'm hanging around. Let me get my competent communicator. La-di-da. I'm like, listen, I want my distinguished Toastmaster. What's the highest I can go? Okay, great. Let's do it.
That's where we're going. Yep.
Yeah. Right. So I do it. I go through, it takes me like 3 years. Right. And I do I get to my distinguished Toastmaster. But in the meantime, as I'm doing that, all of these other opportunities are coming out. So I'm really developing the speaking thing. And I'm really seeing that I'm able to connect with people. And when they say, okay, Robert, I got to speak. I got a job interview coming up and I have to do a sales presentation. Can you help me with that? Robert, I've got this this speech that I need to do before this group. Can you help me with that? Robert, I work with this pharmaceutical company. Right. And the language is technical and I don't know if you're going to understand it, but can you help me make my stuff more interesting? Mm-hmm. Right. And so I'm sharing with these and, I'm getting feedback that listen, I don't know how you understood that stuff, the pharmaceutical talk, Robert. I'm like, it's not the pharmacy talk. It's you're still presenting to people. Right.
It's a connection.
Yeah, you might say some of them are left brain and some of them are right brain or whatever the theory is, the brain science is around it, but you still have to connect with them on an emotional level because no matter who you are, everybody buys stuff from an emotional place.
Yes.
Right? Nobody walks into a car dealership and says, what, it has 4 wheels? Does it have an engine? Okay, cool. I'll take that one. Let's go. No, everybody's like, I like yellow. I like red. I like the sound that's coming out of the stereo system.
That's right.
Ooh, it makes me feel a certain way. Oh, let's turn the windows down. Does it have convertible? Oh, I like the way my hair. You see it? I like the way my hair feels when the top is down.
It's a feeling. It's emotion.
Yeah. So it's like finally one day I sit down and I'm kind of like taking stock of everything. A friend of mine, I joined the National Speakers Association, and a friend, a lady, I'll say her name, Donna St. Louis, who really kind of was so kind and answered a lot of questions for me. She gave me this document, and it was like helping you to find your expertise.
Yes.
And one of the things that she had me do was literally go back through every job I'd ever had.
Man.
Right. So as I go back through these jobs, now I'm starting to see this common thread. Now I'm starting to see, dude, no matter which way you went, left, right, up, down, even if you thought it was going to be this, God turned it into that. Listen, that's just how my life has gone. And I can't take credit for like being so smart that I knew which direction I was going to do and make the right choices along the way. Cause I messed up a whole lot.
Well, it's interesting because it's hard for us at the time to say whether a direction is right or not, because much as you're saying and much as I've done for clients trying to get clarity on their purpose or what they want to build or whatever, there has to be a past reflection. There's got to be a personal inventory that you take and look, and then you say, you know what? I never took the time to even think or see that was the thing. And what I thought was a wrong turn was no wrong turn at all. Right? And I think a lot of people in that space, I mean, heck, I'm somewhat in that space because we were talking a little bit about this before, and I've shared people with this on the last show, is that this show is primarily headed in one direction. And I'm like, man, I really thought I heard from God, like, this is where I'm supposed to go. And then I'm reminded, like, hey, man, how it happens is none of your business, really. It's how it happens is none of your business. It's just the fact that you got to keep taking steps.
Mind your business. You ain't God. Just follow me.
Look, you're right. Yeah, just take the next step. So, man, I want to know, because I think we got several people who are on here and they're probably wondering, like, how can storytelling help me? So I want to know, how can storytelling really help people? And as a result of that story, really getting that story down,
Hmm.
What are some of the things that you've seen with the people that you help? What's like the transformation that's happened as a result of, or the result that they've had as a result of their stories being more concise and presented better?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've discovered from sharing my story is that when I share it, I get, especially at a conference, I get so many people that say, "Oh my gosh, I don't have to have it all figured out. I didn't know that that was okay. I didn't know that I could be 40 years old and still having some questions about life." I'm
Mm,
like, dude, I'm older than 40, right? And I'm like closer to 50 than I am to 40 at this point, and I'm feeling like I'm just now starting to hit my stride, man.
man,
I'm
man,
just I'm just
yes.
now starting to hit it.
Come
And it's
on.
like I I
Go ahead,
I
say it. I mean,
yeah,
you got something on your heart. Go ahead, say it.
no, it's literally like it was a few years ago. I remember this weekend. I had to speak in Maryland, and then I hopped on a plane and I got into Massachusetts, into Boston Thursday night. I had to speak at a school Friday morning. I had to run a workshop Friday afternoon, ran another one um, Friday evening. I spoke at a church Saturday morning, emceed a concert Saturday afternoon, hopped on a plane Saturday night right after the concert, came back to Maryland and did an event on Sunday morning. And so Sunday evening, I'm in my bed and I'm wiped. But there's like this huge smile on my face. And I'm like, this was so doggone awesome. And it's like,
Mm,
man, there's times where I get asked to speak, or I get asked to do a training or workshop, and it's hard work, and I get into it, and this, and it's not even nerves anymore. It's just kind of like when I teach my presentation coaching students, I say to them, my job is not to help you get rid of the butterflies. It's just to help them fly in formation. Right. And so
mm,
what I feel sometimes is I start to feel those butterflies, and they're fluttering. And at the end of it, no matter how nervous I felt, no matter how what I felt, at the end of it, every single day now, I'm like, man, I love that.
yeah.
I love that. And when you get to the place where
Yes.
you can end the day and you're like,
Yeah.
man, today was hard, but I loved it.
Yes. Yes.
That's an awesome place to be. And I'm there. I'm there, man. I
Yes.
mean, business is growing. I'm still at a place where it's kind of like you reach one level of success, and now you're kind of like, okay, now we got to scale, and so I don't know what that looks like. I got to figure out that next step, right? And so
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah. Yeah.
100% sure, but man, I'm digging the journey hardcore, man.
Oh man, people need to hear that, man, because I think people do feel like everybody's got it all figured out. I think if the
Right,
person who says they have it figured out, that's the person you really don't want to listen to,
right,
because if they're not aware enough to realize that they don't have it figured out, it's probably not somebody who you want to just really receive information from. And so, um, what are some of the so kind of back to what we were saying before? It's like, who can benefit from storytelling,
yeah,
and let's talk about some of the components of a good story. Like, what are some of the things that you do to try to help people bring that story out?
yeah. I'll kind of weave through a few things here.
Yeah.
So number one, everybody should be a storyteller,
Yeah.
right?
And
Because
why
we
why why is that? Because I think some
well,
people are probably thinking, I might be an entrepreneur, I might be a business owner, I might be a father, I might be like, why should storytelling matter?
think about it this way. You go home for Thanksgiving dinner. Do you say, you know what? Stocks are up 23%. We had an enrollment of 1,400 people, and our revenues are up 49.37%. No, you don't give them the facts and the data. You tell them stories,
That's right.
right? So we connect through stories. That's the stories have an emotional element. As I said before, people make decisions
Mm,
based on emotion. So if you are a business owner, you don't run in there and slap them in the head with, "Hey, this is my product, buy it now."
yeah.
You try to find out what is the thing that drives them, that they love, that they like, what's the need that they have, and then you craft a story
Mm,
around that makes them say, "Oh my gosh, you're human just like me, and you get me. You understand me." right? That if you're a business owner, that's where you got to be. If you are a pastor, you know, how do you transmit information? You tell them stories, right? If you are a teacher, you tell stories, right? If you are somebody who's a doctor and you tell a patient that, listen, this thing doesn't work for you. This is not really good for you. And the patient's like, whatever, man. And you're like, no, seriously, when I was 14 years old, I did, or my mom did, or I had another patient who did blah, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah.
Oh
And this is what
man.
happened.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so they hear the story and now they listen a little bit because it's like, oh, that's a human being. Okay, great. Maybe I should pay attention a little bit.
Well, I think the cool thing that people need to understand as you're talking, what I'm hearing is that, and it's the title of this is, you know, to influence people, and not in a bad way, but in order, I guess the best way to convey information, to get information to get through, which I think all of us to some degree are trying to at some point,
right,
is to share it. I think the best way to do it is gonna be a story. Now, obviously, you're biased because you're a storyteller, but as you're talking, I'm thinking like, wow, that's exactly what I did today when I was in clinic.
Yep.
Is I told somebody like, I just saw someone just like you with that same elbow problem. Guess what? We did that same thing and it helped them. And they're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's why business is, you look at, when somebody's going to buy a product, they don't just look at the product. They like, you go on Amazon to get something. What do you look at? Okay, I'm looking at the reviews to see what other people thought about it. I'm Googling, you know, what, you know, is this a scam, or did other people have a good experience with this? Right?
That's right.
You don't know these people. You don't know them. Right?
Hey, but you know what's funny?
We're vibing with their story.
But if you see they gave a bad review, you're going to look at that one like, hold up. They only gave 1 star. Like, let me read what that one said. Let me read what that one said.
You had no idea who these people are.
You're right, man.
Right? But we thrive on the human experience. I mean, and for some reason we forget that. We forget it. I mean, especially in professional settings, we feel like we've got to be formal. We feel like we've got to be technical. We feel like, you know, stories are woo woo. It's, you know, soft and smushy cupcake. You know,
if you want it to be, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it can be if that's the result that you want, but that's where the intentionality comes.
And I was about to say that. It's got to be, I mean, you're saying it's got to be intentional. You got to think about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a guy, I mean, on the screen here, you have Signature Story. There's a guy by the name of David Aker, Aaker, and he's a signature story specialist, 3 triple S. Yeah. All right. And so he's got this definition of a signature story, and he describes a signature story as a strategic asset. Ooh, right. I could go through the whole thing. So a signature story, or a story, is intended for a purpose. It's intended for several things. Number one, it's intended for connection. It's intended for influence. It's intended to transmit information. It's also intended to move people towards maybe some measure of our belief, or to align with a vision that we have currently. Right? So you're not telling people, you don't talk to people to say, you know what, I'm sharing this with you and it's not the truth. So you don't have to really believe me. You want people to believe you. You want people to trust you. Everybody naturally wants people to trust them. Brendan Burchard, I don't know if you heard of him. Brendan Burchard.
Oh man, big
yeah. Brendan Burchard has this thing. He does it on most of his videos, and he says everybody at the end of their life asks 3 questions: Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter?
Yep.
Right. We want to know that we mattered, and so everything that we do is with the intention of mattering to someone. Right. And so we, in order to matter to people, in order to influence people, we say things that move them in that direction, you know, and there's a lot of different levels of this, but yeah.
So I'm only guessing as I'm talking to you, in the course of even just a normal day, I mean, whatever you want to call a normal day, in your interaction with people, you're probably intentionally telling them stories.
All the time.
I mean, I'm thinking, even through the course of the interview, I'm like, I know you're telling stories, but I'm also like, you know what? He's probably intentionally telling this story, and he's probably telling it a certain way. Like I'm like kind of thinking about it now. I'm like, which to me, as somebody who is trying to optimize, right,
Yeah.
Robert? Like I'm trying to optimize business. I'm to optimize the relationship, not take advantage of. Let me be sure I'm being clear. I'm trying to optimize my relationship with my children. I'm
Mhm.
trying to optimize my relationship with my patients. I'm trying to, as you said, kind of transfer this belief, because if I don't do a good enough job of doing that and I know it can help them, and now
Yeah.
I know these stories can help, I'm doing a disservice to them if
Yeah.
I don't share the story and I'm just kind of trying to browbeat them with facts
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not like when I say stories, a lot of times people think once upon a time, right? And it's not always about a long drawn out story, because I mean that could get crazy. Like every meeting you're in, they say, "Hey Robert, what do you think?" Well, there was this time that I was in seventh grade, and I don't always want to tell a story,
Right.
but I want to think about things from a storytelling context or a story format. So every really good story has like four elements, right? There's settings, there's characters, there's conflict, and there's resolution,
Mm.
right? So the setting and the characters really is the context and what's going on and what's happening now currently. Then the conflict, and this is the part that really connects with people, because this is the natural tension. This is like what's broken, what
Right.
what 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 you're feeling, what is causing you to respond or react violently or in any way to certain things, right? And everybody has a reaction, and that's why things like reality shows work,
Mm.
right? Because they play upon the conflict, they play upon broken stuff,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
everybody can identify with broken stuff,
Mm. Or
broken emotions,
broken self. That's what I'm about to
broken
say.
relationships. Yeah. Broken self-esteem, everybody identifies with that. So if you kind of say, okay, this is where we are, this is what's broken. And I know you identify with this because I see this in your life, or I see this, or I see you doing this. This is what's broken. And even if I don't know you identify with it, this is what I've gone through. This is
Mm.
how broken I was.
Mm.
Right. And then after that, we move them to the answer. We move them to the resolution. We move them to the solution, to the thing that is either going to fix it or move them on a journey towards fixedness. If that's a word, right?
Right.
So so you think about it. If you think about good pastors,
Yeah.
good reverends, good preachers, that's what they do,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
they set up the world is sinful. The world is this way. The world is jacked up. The world's messed up. Listen, I know that you're jacked up because I'm jacked up too. I've gone through these things.
That's
But
right.
guess what, y'all? Jesus is the answer, right? So
Mm.
they listen. It's a story arc. They take you through
Mm.
this thing, and it's not always once upon a time. It's just the format of a story that you take people through.
And this is when, to me, it gets, again, man, my mind is going crazy right now thinking,
Yeah.
it's like, if you're a business owner, if you're
Mhm.
a speaker, you almost kind of have to have some stories in your back pocket
You
ready,
always, and we all have them.
because in essence, as a business owner, as a speaker, anything that you're doing that creates value,
Mhm.
you're solving a problem in some way.
Yeah.
And you just said, if you talk about the problem, the broken, whatever the problem is, you need to have some stories about when the solution that you sell fixed it,
Mhm.
or when you were broken and you got fixed,
Right.
or when somebody says, "Well, I don't know, but what about this?" We call them objections,
Right.
right? That you kind of got to be thinking like, well, what would be a story that is, like you said, depends on what you're trying to do, that connects with it.
So the words that are at the bottom here, signature story.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I teach signature stories a lot, because if you have a signature story, you don't always have to fish for different stories,
Mm.
right? You can tell the same story in multiple settings with different lessons. You can tell
Mm.
different elements or different portions of a longer signature story in different settings with different lessons. So you don't have to be fishing for stories every time. And I have what I call a story vault. So as I think of stories in my life, I put them down in a notebook in my Evernote, right? But I also have a signature story that I share, and I can share it with a church group. I can share it with a corporate audience. I can share it with a youth group. I can share it with entrepreneurs. I can share, because there are elements of the story that are human, right? And so I take those elements and I turn them into a lesson, you know, and I won't take you through this long story now because I know we're short on time, but I tell a story about when I was 8 years old and I learned how to ride a bicycle by myself, right? Yeah. And I learned how to ride a bicycle because at my friend's house that I was at, I figured out that I could coast the bike down his driveway. He had one of those houses where the garage was underneath the house. And so I figured out that I could coast the bike down the driveway and it would allow me to balance better. And so I figured out I could do that. And then after a little bit, I got out onto the street and I couldn't balance so great. So I went to the end of the block and there was a hill at the end of the street. And I pushed the bike over the hill and over the crest of the hill and started to just like ride down the hill, right? And there's an intersection at the bottom of this hill. And as I get closer to this intersection, I realized that there was one critical lesson I forgot to teach myself in the driveway. Brakes. The brakes. Right? So I mean, I get close to the end of the hill and near to the intersection, and there's a lawn, and I throw the bike onto the lawn and I got mud on my face and I'm crashing through a fence. But I stand up and I'm like, yeah, right? Because I had ridden the bike down the hill. So the lesson that I share with corporate audience is like, listen, sometimes you're on a project. You've got this project and you feel like you got it under control, but it's like me going down the hill and the pedals start to turn so fast that my feet fly off now, and it's kind of out of control, and it's out of control. And oh, by the way, there's nothing that I can do really because there's an intersection coming up. You've got a deadline. You've got stuff that you've got to hit, and I take them through this, right? So I use that story with just different applications, man. If you can take one story, if you can pick one story out of your life, write that story down and say, geez, how many lessons? I'm going to challenge myself, see how many lessons I can pull out of this one story.
Man, I hope y'all taking notes. Let me just tell y'all, I hope y'all saw how this man just told you. He told you. He said character, setting, and let's just say problem and solution. Those aren't the same words you use, but I got to try to make it me learn it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did right now. As you told a story, you told the setting of what was going on. Yeah. You told what was happening, who was involved. It was your friend's house. I can see it. Here's the problem. There's an intersection. I can't stop.
Yeah.
You did everything like that in like a minute.
Yeah. And so the big thing here is that just in the same way that I tell you the story and it created a picture in your mind, you could literally see me on the bike.
I can see you. I can.
Yeah. So that's your job. That's what you do. That's why you use stories, because you begin to create videos and images in people's heads. So here's a quick tip for your listeners. One of the things that you can do to really draw people in right at the beginning of any speech or presentation, there's a lot of different techniques, but one technique that you can use to draw them in almost every time, ask a question. Ask a question. Our brains are wired to answer questions. Our brains have a response known as instinctive elaboration. And if you think about it, anytime somebody asks a question, whether you answer it out of your mouth or not, your brain starts to say, wait a minute, I'm gonna answer that. Hold on, I want to answer that. Let me grab it. Let me answer that. Yeah, your brain, you make the decision after to shut it down, but your brain immediately says, I want to answer that. Right. So if you do that at the beginning of any conversation, any speech, any presentation, any talk, you ask a question and try to stay away from yes or no questions.
Sure.
Ask a
something
question
that they need to think about.
Yeah.
Because they're going to want an end to it. We all want a.
Yeah.
We don't want to go to sleep. We don't want to go to the next thing until we realize like the actual answer to the question.
What if? Start a question with what if this existed? Or imagine what the world would be like if. Right. And now people start thinking they're not even listening to you anymore, because now they're playing through this scenario in their brain and you're just the narrator. Right.
Man.
So that, you create connections.
Let me tell y'all, man, I'm mad that we right up here at 8 o'clock. Matter of fact, y'all about to go. Me and Robert about to keep talking. I'm gonna just be real with y'all. We about to cut y'all off. Me and Robert about to keep on talking. Man, listen, like I said, we run out of time. I want to respect people's time. Where can people find you? I mean, I'll put these banners here real quick. So for the business owners, for people who can really use a story to be able to do whatever, you tell them. You tell them. I'm not going to do
you can
your
find me online, man. If you want to holler at me on social media, I'm on all social media as Robert Kennedy 3. That's Facebook, that's Twitter, that's LinkedIn, that's Instagram, that's what else am I on? I'm not on Snapchat or TikTok. So yeah, those are my spots. Those are my spots. My website's robertkennedy3.com. But one of the places that I hang out in online is my group called the Storytellers Growth Lab. So you can either search Storytellers Growth Lab on Facebook, or you can go to storytellersgrowthlab.com and let's hang out and talk about storytelling.
Man, well, first of all, I'm gonna tell you right now, you can go ahead and when you see my name pop up across, just be like, oh,
approved.
I know B, approved.
Yeah.
You get up in there and kind of start learning some stuff. So you can definitely count on me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, if you're a business owner, if you're a salesman, my man Reggie, you better get in this group. I know some people on it. Everybody who I see on here can benefit.
Yeah.
Both Reggies. I got 2 Reggies on here. Tobin said he was motivated by you just walking up in a building saying, who's the business owner? He said, can I just show up and start treating patients with you, Dr. Brown? Like, nah.
Listen, I mean, one thing, God puts people in your life, and my wife, when we got married, she's bold, man. And one of the things that she taught me was people can only say no. They can only say no, but they can't stop you from asking the question.
Amen, brother. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And so, man, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure being on here. Thank you for being on. We're going to have like a part 2 so we can start really getting into some nitty gritty kind of stuff. I've already taken notes. I'm going to be watching this again so I can start telling stories as I do speaking, and I've got a business. I've got multiple businesses. And so I need to be able to benefit from this. But more importantly, man, in addition to that, what you do, like I told you, I'm fascinated by people who know something so well and can become an expert, if you will. And I think we toss around that word probably too much now these days, this expert, but for people who I can just say have a wealth of knowledge in something, I can tell that's about storytelling. I'll listen to people who know basket weaving really well, just so I can see how much they love it and see their physiology change and see, and so I can tell that's the way with you with storytelling and you're changing lives, blessing people. I'm glad that people got to hear your story in terms of you don't have to have it all figured out. I think a lot of brothers are in that place, whether they want to admit it or not. I'm in that place, so it's always reassuring to hear that, what I think many of us consider success may not be. And when you're really in that sweet spot, like you're talking about, man, it was hard work, but it was certainly worth it, is only yet to come. So thank you, man. I appreciate it.
God bless, man. No problem.
All right, you guys. Well, listen, it's been another Tuesday here on Men of Impact. And look, I'm going to just be real with you. What we're about to do is I'm going to create a little survey on my Facebook page. And I got a couple new logos, a couple new thoughts in terms of what we're going to be calling the show as we're kind of pivoting more towards being able to help men really perform at a high level in multiple areas of your life, in your faith, in your family, in your physical health, in your health, wealth. Just how can we excel our performance in multiple areas so that we can literally be the best men that we can be? Because guess what? As I said before, people are waiting, man. People are waiting for our greatness. And so we're going to be talking about what that is. So I'm going to take a survey on that here over the next couple of days, and then we'll launch the new title of the show. But we'll be back next week, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time with another guest. And hope you guys be blessed, and we'll see you then.